Thanks so much for joining us today for Nova's presentation, Securely Submit Your Census Data While Protecting Your Employees. Before we jump in, I want to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. At the top of your webinar screen, you'll see a question mark icon. That's where you can submit any questions during the presentation. We'll plan to answer questions at the end, but if we're unable to get to yours, just email us at webinars@nova401k.com and we'll be happy to follow up. Right next to that, you'll see a paper icon. That's where you can find today's presentation in handout PDF form. If you're having trouble viewing or downloading it, feel free to email us and we'll send it your way. Just a quick note that there's no CE credit offered for today's webinar. If you want to catch up on webinars you've missed, including recordings of today's session, you can find those on our YouTube channel, Nova 401k Associates, or on our website at www.nova401k.com/webinars. With that, I'm excited to introduce today's presenters. Christine Hall, Senior Defined Contribution Account Manager for our East Coast 2 team, and Meredith Moore, Senior Account Manager for our East Coast 2 team as well. Go ahead, Meredith.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go over how to securely submit your census data while protecting your employees. It's something all of you know that you're going to be doing the annual data collection task once a year, so we will go ahead and get started on it. As a usual disclaimer, this information in the presentation is general in nature and is not intended to be a substitute for legal or tax advice. Please consult a qualified professional, such as an attorney or accountant, if you need legal or tax advice. The agenda for today, we're going to go over Nova's cybersecurity measures. We're going to go on the census request backgrounds, the various deadlines, accessing plan sponsor link, the year-end data collection, and frequently asked questions. As you all know, there are a tremendous amount of money in 401k plans, and as a result, that has attracted the attention of some bad guys. So we always try to keep data secure. We have coordinated attacks on Nova and record keepers, so to stop that, we need to start by submitting data securely at all times. It can start as a phishing attack or a hack on employees' email. Attackers then contact the record keepers and reset passwords. With new passwords, attackers can request loans and distributions that are fraudulent. With ACHs and wires, typically only trivial amounts are recovered when the theft is discovered. The type of theft is actually not covered by a plan's fidelity bond, fiduciary insurance, or E&O insurance. So therefore, we must all be alert and do our part to prevent fraudsters from succeeding. Common files that we have that have a lot of census data are census files, deferral files, payroll files, and address files. A lot of confidential information is also found on non-discrimination testing files, the ADP test, the top heavy, the 415, the 402G, and the 401A4. Most software masks social securities now, but some do not. So always be aware of full socials. We also have census sensitive data on annual valuation reports, tax forms, W-2 forms, K-1s, and Schedule Cs. Don't ever send us this information via regular email, as you'll be helping the bad guys. Be sure to encrypt your email or to send it through us securely. Ways to submit information to us securely are through our plan sponsor link portal above. The feature, one of the tabs at the top is a secure file exchange. That is a secure email where you can attach data and send it to Nova securely. You can also send it with encryption software like ZixSelects. New plan contacts must be authorized by an existing contact in order to be added to our system. That's just simply a security risk, so we need to make sure that anybody who's new on your plan should be able to have access to the information. Nova associates go through mandatory cybersecurity training and other trainings every quarter. We do that to stay aware of the current attacks. And Nova password policy, we always have to have our passwords regularly changed. We even have to satisfy certain strength standards on our passwords to be able to keep them. How does Nova help keep data secure? Use the census file upload function on Plan Sponsor Link to submit data to Nova. You can also use the secure file exchange that we just discussed to send in a file. You need to limit the number of people copied on email and always use complex passwords, typically 12 characters or more, and change them often. When will we receive our census request? Emails are generally sent out in January. Some of them have already gone out. Some of them went out last week, the week of January 5th. And additional emails will be going out the week of January 20th. We will send monthly reminders thereafter. Why is a year-end census required? We use your year-end data to perform annual testing. Annual deferral limits also apply to safe harbor plans. So some safe harbor plans are deemed to pass certain tests, but not all. So therefore, we ask for full census data from all of our plans. We also use this information to prepare the Form 5500 and to prepare the Form 8955 SSA. Which employees should be reported on the census file? Report everyone. Every employee who received a W-2 needs to be reported on the census file. You would also include any owners who are not paid by W-2, perhaps paid by K-1 or Schedule C. You would report these on the census file as well. We always request for gross wages and W-2 Box 1 compensation to be reported on each census. You will not need to include independent contractor employees, 1099 employees on the census file. Again, we just need all employees that received a W-2 in the past year and any owners that are not paid with W-2. Deadlines. The deadlines for ADP ACP tested plans. We need to make sure that we have your census data back by January 23rd. This gives us time to complete your testing. The IRS deadline for the ADP ACP refunds is March 15th. This year that falls on a weekend, so the deadline is going to be March 13th. However, keep in mind that some record keepers require that we turn in this distribution information before the 13th. So don't wait until the last second. Please get us your data as soon as possible. We will need the census for the excess deferral testing by February 13th. That is for people who may have exceeded a certain deferral limit. That limit, we have to have those processed by April 15th. This is a hard deadline. This is not a NOVA deadline. April 15th is when we need it by. The original Form 5500 filing deadline is July 31st. Again, this is not a NOVA deadline. And then the Form 8955 SSA is also July 31st. Both July 31st dates are for calendar year plans. Accessing plan sponsor link. You would go to the link here, the secureplansponsorlink.com/NOVA. Your username is your email address that we have on file for you. So if you changed your email during the year, please be sure to let us know because your access to our secure portal is tied to that specific email address. You would put in your username and password. If you're a first-time user, you would simply click on that first-time user link and it'll send you a temporary password. If you just forgot your password, you would click on that link and it will also send you a password. This is not something the NOVA account manager can help you with. So if you're not sure, you'll need to use one of these two links to help reset your password. Once you're in Plan Sponsor link, you can change your password. If you look over to the right, you'll see my name. There's 3 dots next to it. You can click on that and you can change your password once you're inside as well. So keep that in mind. Now we get to the year-end data collection task. For most of you, you're only going to have one year-end data collection task unless you've been very bad and haven't done it in past years. So you would find the appropriate year and you would click Begin Task. This is what your screen is going to look like once you start Begin Task. There are going to be 10 steps that you're going to need to complete. Everyone will need to complete this. Most of them will be pre-populated from prior years where you can just review the data and click through there. As you're going through, please be sure that the data you provide is accurate. If we have to do revised testing due to incorrect data, additional fees of $200 per hour will apply. Please note that your compliance testing and reporting will also be incorrect, and this can result in IRS penalties and additional administrative fees for corrections and revisions. Again, you're going to have 10 steps to complete. After each step, you'll click Save. You'll get a little check mark next to that task, and then you will continue to the next step. This is another screenshot of the year-end data collection task. One thing I wanted to point out, which is very useful, there is a notes button in the right-hand side. That's that green notes button. If you think of something on any of the steps that doesn't quite fit into the step itself, but it's something that would be helpful to your account manager to know, please type it into that notes section, and your account manager will have the ability to see it. And it's great if you just want to add anything extra in there. So step one is your company contact information. This will be pre-populated from a prior year. You just need to review it. If you need to make revisions, please do so on this page. Obviously, the pencil is used for revisions. And then once you've completed that, you simply would click Save. You'd get your check mark, and you would go to the next task. Step two is your employer company data. Again, most of this is going to be pre-populated. You'll have your company name and your EIN and your fiscal year end name. Please be sure your entity type is also noted in here. Now, new this year, you're going to need to select your payroll provider from the drop-down list. We can't put every payroll provider in here, so if you do have a payroll provider that is not included in that list, you can select other non-web-based provider or other web-based provider. Please make your revisions as necessary and add that to the screen. Once you are finished, please click Save, and again, you'll get your check mark and you can continue to the next step. Step three is the principal step. This is very important for our testing purposes, so please make sure this is complete and accurate. Total ownership must add up to at least 100%. If you had ownership changes during the year, we will need to know everyone who had a piece of ownership during the year. So it is possible if you had someone who had 10% ownership for the first part of the year, then it transferred to someone else for the second part of the year. In that case, your ownership for 2025 would be 110%. So it is possible to have over 10%, but it needs to at least be 100%. We also ask that you identify all the officers of the company. You must list officer, and if they have no ownership, just put ownership as 0. If you're prompted to complete the Social Security number, please do so. For nonprofits, you would simply enter nonprofit and put 100%. For publicly traded companies, you would put publicly traded and enter 100%. Again, we just want to make sure this section is complete because we will use this in multiple year-end testing. Once you finish with that section, you can complete Save. Again, if you want to make a note, this is a good one to make a note on. If there are changes in ownership and you want to let your account manager know some additional information about that, you can definitely click on that green notes button to make a little note there while you're completing this step. Again, if you have more than one company or entity that sponsors your plan, we need complete ownership for every entity, and the total ownership must equal 100%. Step 4, so you've completed the first 3, now you're on step 4, family relationships. These has to do with employees who are related directly to an owner. Typically, that's going to be your children, which will include legally adopted children. It would be the spouse. It would be parents of the owner or grandparents of the owner. You need to make sure this information is fully completed. To add that, you would simply have this screen pop up where you will put the name, your Social Security number, your relationship to that person, and you make sure you click Submit. You would do this for every family member. Again, if you're not sure, you have someone that doesn't quite fit that, you can always add a note and your account manager can take a look at that at some point. If you have a nonprofit or a publicly traded company and there are no employees obviously related to the owner, then you would simply click Save and click to the next step. Step 5, this is other businesses. This applies when you have other businesses of an owner or an owner's spouse or an owner's children. We need to know this information because this will infect control groups or affiliated service groups, and obviously that impacts your testing. We do know this information when you first set up your plan, but through the years that can change. And so this is a great way to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information available for your plan. We want to make sure that we only do your testing once. That's your goal and ours. So we want to make sure that all of this information is complete. We're not trying to be in your business, if you will. We just want to make sure that everything is set up correctly, as sometimes, depending on how it's set up, again, you may have a control group now where you didn't before, or you may have an affiliated service group now where you might not have in the past. So please be sure to complete all sections of this and make sure you list the full ownership percentages for all these additional businesses. If it adds up to more than 100%, that's okay. If you have questions on how to complete this section when you're going through it, you can make a note, or you can also reach out to your account manager who can help you. All right, step 6, very important. We want to make sure we have all the contacts correct for your plan. This is going to be pre-populated from a past year, but we need to make sure that all the contacts are good. You can add information, you cannot delete it. You can make notes for it. If you want a contact removed, you can click this change request button. That information will be sent to your plan's account manager, and they will be able to update that section for you. So again, we're used to seeing a lot of change on this point, but we want to make sure that all of your contacts for the plan are correct. And again, many of those contacts do have access to your secure portal. So if they're no longer with you, we do not want them to continue to have access to the portal. And if you have new people, we need to make sure that they are set up in our system so that the emails are going to the appropriate people and everyone has the plan information that is needed. All right, step 7 is the questionnaire, which I know is some of y'all's favorite. It's not that bad, I promise. Remember, this questionnaire is similar depending on your plan type. It might look a little bit different than this if you're safe harbor versus non-safe harbor. But basically, these questions are very important. We use these to complete your annual testing and, of course, to complete any employer contribution requests, calculation requests that are sent to us. Most of the questions are yes, no. And if you have questions with this section, you're not quite sure how to fill it out, be sure to contact your account manager. They'll be happy to help you do this section. We're going to go through some of them right now. Again, depending on your plan type, it might look a little bit different, but in general, this is how it's going to look. All right, so the first 11 questions this year, they're asking about employer contributions. The first part, questions 1 through 4, is focusing on your profit sharing contribution. So if you don't want a profit sharing contribution, then you simply click no and you can skip on down to the next set of questions. If you do want a profit sharing contribution, please be sure you fill this out correctly. Number 2 said, would you like NOVA to calculate a profit sharing contribution for the year? Your answer would be yes. Number 3, be as descriptive as possible. Tell us exactly what you would like from your profit sharing. It doesn't mean that's necessarily going to be what it ends up being, but let us know what you would prefer so that we know how to calculate it best for you. And very important, what date would you like to receive the profit sharing? It has to be at least 3 weeks from the date you submit your complete and accurate census data. So that means that if you have an owner that is paid with a K-1 or a Schedule C, then we have got to have that information before we can do your profit sharing. As you can imagine, that would change the outcome. So we need to make sure that all the data that we have for you is as close to being full as possible. The next section that we're looking at has to do with discretionary match. Now, for those of you who sometimes get confused on this step, keep in mind discretionary match is not a safe harbor match. A safe harbor match has a set formula. A discretionary match is up to the discretion of the employer. So if you do not have a discretionary match for the year and you do not want NOVA to calculate it, you would say no, thank you to 6, and you would say no, you don't want us to calculate anything for you. If you did have a discretionary match, please, please, please make sure that you answer what your match formula was, because it is up to you. We need to make sure we have that confirmed when we are doing your testing. If you don't answer that question, I promise you your account manager will come back to you and ask that question. So go ahead and make sure you put your match formula in there. And then if you need Nova's assistance or you want us to help calculate, be sure you answer those questions as well. As with the profit sharing, for the match formula, it needs to be the request to have your calculation must be at least 3 weeks out from when we receive your full census data. So if you want that contribution early, please be sure to get your complete census data to us as soon as possible. All right, once we get past that, you're in questions 14 through 18, and this only applies to plans if you have a sole proprietor or partnership where they report their income on a K1 or a Schedule C. So if this does not apply to you, you can skip these questions. Just so you know, Nova must have a copy of a K1 or Schedule C if this is applicable to your plan. We do not need a copy of a K1 for an S Corp. But again, compliance testing as well as any employer contribution allocations cannot be started until all K1s and or Schedule Cs have been provided. If you're unsure if these apply to your plan, please reach out to your account manager. Question 19, 20, and 21 have to do with control groups or affiliated service groups. Again, this kind of goes back to reporting businesses if you have changes during the year. Control group is 80% common ownership in other businesses, and affiliated service groups are 2 or more organizations with service relationships. If you have a change in ownership during the year, if you purchased a new company during the year, or if you sold a new company, then make sure you mark that. And if any of these companies have another qualified plan, make sure you mark that as well, as that could impact your plan's annual testing. So question 22 has to do with part-time, seasonal, or temporary employees. If your plan document excludes these type of employees, and you had those types of W-2 employees during this past year, you would answer yes there. And when you're going through your census, which Christine will go over in a moment, you need to make sure that those people have a job classification category column completed to tell us what kind of employer they were. Were they seasonal, part-time, or temporary? If this applies to you and you have any employees who regularly work between 500 and 999 hours a year, you need to track out. If you track hours for those employees, you need to make sure you report hours. That is going to be column K on your census file. We need to make sure we have the most accurate hours possible to help calculate eligibility. This requirement has to do with the long-term part-time employee rules that are part of the Secure Act and Secure 2.0. Questions 24 and 25 are asking what kind of other plans or types, contribution types, the employer maintains. Does your employer have a cafeteria plan? Does it have a Section 125 plan or a health-sponsored HSA savings account plan? If so, you would mark that yes, and you would complete that section of the census file. 26, will a request for an extension of time for the plan sponsor return? If you're not sure, just answer this no. If you know you're not going to have your information on time and that you will be filing an extension, you can mark that answer yes. All right, once you get past that questionnaire, you have a little one about the Form 5500. Late deposits. So for a lot of people, they're not sure what is a late deposit. If you're a small plan and you file on a 5500 SF, you need to make sure that all your contributions, your payroll contributions, are deposited within 7 business days from the check date. If you know that there was at least a few that were not deposited, you need to make sure you answer that yes. And that's something that your account manager and you can go over at a later time to make sure that we have calculated lost earnings for you, to make sure that everything is corrected in the system. If you are a large plan, then your auditor will tell you if you have them late. Again, if you're not sure, please reach out to your account manager and discuss that with them. We have to report late deposits on the Form 5500, and definitely this is checked by the Department of Labor. For a fidelity bond, if you know it and you have it on file, you can provide the coverage amount and the auto increase. If Nova helped you purchase a bond, we would have this information, but if we did not, we would not. So please make sure that you complete that if Nova did not help you purchase your bond. Number 4 through 6, this has to do with who is going to sign the Form 5500. Please make sure that the person that you put here is the one that you want on those Form 5500s, because this will be the official signer. They're going to be separated out. Question 5 is simply the first name. Make sure you include the legal name of the signer. Question 6 is the last name, which is the legal name of the signer. Please make sure that you enter correct email address for the Form 5500 signer, as when we prepare that Form 5500, we are going to send it to that person for them to sign and submit. Again, just please review the spelling of the 5500 signer, and if you're not the signer, please don't put your name there. If the plan sponsor has the DB plan, there may be a few additional questions in this section.
All right, tag I'm it. If you, okay, while I'm sharing my screen, hold on a second. There we go. Okay, now, can you see that, Meredith?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you everyone for hanging in there with us as we're about halfway through, and I'm sure Meredith's happy to be finished with her section. I do want to give you a reminder as you're completing these, if you get through a certain part and you get interrupted or you need time to do something else, you can stop doing the year-end data collection anytime, and you can always come back to it. This is also important to know, like if multiple people have to work on your data collection, like maybe someone at your company is going to complete those steps that Meredith just went over and someone else is going to complete the employee section, that is totally fine. It does not need to be done all in one shot. Don't stress yourself out in that way. You can stop it, you can come back to it. So I'm going to be going through the employee census with you. And Meredith said that her step 7, that employer questionnaire, is a favorite. I'm going to argue that this census is the favorite. It is time consuming. We do ask a lot of questions in it, but it is so important that we have this data accurately from you, because this is what we use to do our testing. So I'm going to take you through it. Again, these steps in this example that I have right here, I actually didn't complete any of these steps yet. None of them have a check mark. So you want to make sure as you're going through them that if you think it's done, you see the check mark, because if you don't see the check mark, it means you didn't save and it's not going to let you do the approval step at the end. But we're going into the employees here. There's some directions at the top. These directions are very useful. I'm going to go through that information with you as we're going through this. I do want to point out though too, if you're going through this and you're like, man, I wish that I could be hearing Meredith and Christine going through this again, guess what? You're in luck. Shortly after we do this, a recording is going to be put here that you can just click here, right here, and it'll take you to the YouTube of this presentation to help you out. All right, so now if you've done census for Nova in the past, when you get to this screen, right down here on the bottom, you're going to see listed your employees as of 12/31/24. This is how your screen's going to look if you're a brand new plan with Nova and we don't have data from before. Okay, now there's a couple of ways that you can complete this census. If you have a small group and you want to do it manually, and I'm talking a small group, like you have a handful of people, you don't want to work with a spreadsheet, there is a manual entry option, and you're going to click on that little plus sign from that previous screen that's right here, this plus sign, and this will bring up a screen where you can add in an employee manually. Going back to this screen, beside each person, there's also going to be a pencil and edit button, which will take you to this screen with the pre-filled information. So you can manually go through here and put in all this information manually, person by person. Just remember that there's more information that's needed down here, so make sure you scroll down to get to the bottom of this, save each person. Now, if you have more people, and what I think is the easiest way to do this, unless you are really not at all familiar with spreadsheets, but you know, if you can work even just decently in a spreadsheet, I think the easiest way is to pull this information all out into a spreadsheet. There are 3 small buttons on that home screen. Again, it's right over here. Click on those 3 small buttons and it'll bring a drop down. It'll give you some choices. The first thing we're going to talk about is exporting, because that's really the first thing you want to do. So when you click on export, it'll pull all that information that we have from 2024. So all your active employees as of 12/31/24 are going to be in the spreadsheet, so that you don't need to re-enter their names or their social security numbers, their dates of birth, their original date of hire. It's going to be in there for you. Just we'll need to add new people. Now, if you have a way to pull that information from your payroll, you can copy over that, but doing the export is going to pull out the template for you, and it's going to be an XLS format. Save a copy of this file somewhere on your computer, maybe in your plan records, so that you can go back to it the next year and look and see what you did. Once you have that completed, then you have the option to import that spreadsheet back into the data request, and it's a real easy drop and drag import. So once you have that Excel spreadsheet out there, when you open it, you'll see that there's multiple tabs on the bottom. The one that you're going to be entering the data into is the Employees tab. Right beside it is an Instructions tab, and that's helpful. That will explain what each of the fields are. I'm going to explain them to you here too, but that's a great reference. Okay. It is very important that you do not alter any of these worksheets. Even if you're like, I don't need the instructions, don't delete it. Leave it there. Don't move them into a different order. Leave them there. The other thing is, when you're in the spreadsheet, do not change any of the formatting. If a column doesn't apply to your plan, that's okay. Just skip it, but don't delete it. Really important, because if you change the format, even just a little bit, it won't import for you. Okay. So Meredith talked about this a little bit, but anything that I repeat that Meredith already said, it's because it's super important. All right. So on your employee census, we're going to need everyone who received a W-2 for 2025. And that doesn't matter if they're hired, if they're still employed at the end of the year, or if they're no longer employed, or even if they just worked 5 hours during the year. Everyone that gets a W-2, we want them. Okay. If you are a type of company where your owners are going to receive a K-1 or Schedule C, we also are going to need them on the census request. You're probably not going to have their compensation information. That's okay. We'll know that they're an owner because you're going to provide that information, and then just put $1 in their compensation amount, and that'll trigger us to know for sure we need to update that. Here are also more detailed census instructions that go into even more detail than those instructions on the spreadsheet. So feel free to use that as a reference too. I know some people learn better different ways. Hearing us might be a good way, but looking at this and just seeing it visually laid out in silence might be more helpful for you, you know, so feel free to use that. What if you have an active employee that didn't have any compensation during the year, but they're still on your payroll? Include them in your census. Like maybe you had someone that was on medical leave all year long or out on military leave. Include them in your census, but this is a great example of when you can use that notes tab. Make a note so that your account manager knows what's up with that person and doesn't need to say, oh, you forgot somebody. No, you didn't. You knew that they were out, but you wanted to include them. Now, I want to go through some of the columns on the spreadsheet. And right here, we're going to go through all the date columns. And this is really important, especially if you have a company where you have people coming and going, a higher turnover, or even if you don't, you know, you have a situation where you might have someone who left, decides to come back. All right, so date of birth, that's easy. That's static. Hopefully everyone's date of birth remains the same. Original date of hire. And for this, I want to stress original. This is not most recent date of hire. This is the original date of hire. So that should always be the same. You know, if someone worked for you 10 years ago and they were just recently rehired, we still want their original date of hire. Now, for date of separation, that is going to be their most recent date of separation. So if they've come and go, we want the most recent one through 12/31/25. If something already happened here in 26, we don't care about that for the 25 census, but through 12/31/25. Okay. If the date of separation is due to death or disability or retirement, you can mark that here with a Y. Otherwise, you can just leave that blank. But this date of rehire, again, is the most recent date of rehire. Okay. So if you are entering a date of rehire for someone, that means that that person also has to have a date of separation. If you have a date of rehire, you have to had a date of separation. Okay. The other thing that we have columns in the past, but some new columns this year, is if you go all the way to the end of the spreadsheet, and I don't have a picture of them here, but we have some columns for addresses, employee deferral percentages, auto enrollment. Those fields are not required, but they can be really helpful to us. Like the addresses could be used by Nova Distributions, deferral percentages could be used if there's some kind of questions involved with what happened with the employee contributions. They're not required, but if you are easily able to pull them from your payroll data, please include them. And when I mean easily, you know, like you shouldn't be spending more than 5-10 minutes to pull them in. We don't want you to manually enter that information. But if it's an easy pull, please provide it. That's helpful to us, and it could be helpful if questions come up. Next very important column is hours. Hours is not a required column because there are some plans that we don't need it for, but I'm going to be honest to you. I almost always tell my clients, please provide hours, because for most plans, it's required for eligibility and or vesting. So again, if this is something that you can pull straight from your payroll information, give us the exact hours, we'll take them, that's perfect. If it's not something that you can easily pull, and like, let's say you have some salaried people and it's hard to get their hours, then anyone that you know worked at least 1,000 hours during the year, you can just put 1,000 in. But we do need to know specific exact hours for anyone that worked under 1,000. And that's for multiple reasons, including vesting, including those long-term part-time employee rules. So that's hours. Okay. And then right below it, I have the compensation columns for you, compensation and pre-taxed items. Those are important. We do a quality check here at Nova by using these 4 columns. The way that we're defining gross compensation, and this is really important, is gross compensation is the W-2 box 1 compensation, which is the taxable income, plus the 2 tax deferred pre-taxed items. That's how you get to your gross. So you're adding in what's taxable and what would have been taxable had it not been deferred. So if you have a pre-taxed health 125 plan, you answered that in that plan questionnaire that Meredith was talking about, you want to make sure that you provide those amounts in column P so that they can tie correctly together. And then your employee pre-taxed 401k contributions, deferral contributions, these 3 items added together should equal your gross compensation. If it doesn't equal, we have an automated check that your plan goes through when you submit your census, and it's going to be bounced right back to you. So that's really important to remember that those 4 items tie together. We do have a new column this year. It's W-2 Box 3 compensation. And I apologize for having to ask for more information, but this is because of IRS regulations. This is because of the new Roth catch-up requirements and the new category that we need to be able to determine, the highly paid individuals. So highly paid individuals, as you might know, is anyone that earned over $150,000 in 2025, highly paid individual for 26. But we want to see them coming before it actually happens too, so we can let you know about this. So you do not need to fill in this entire column. Again, if you're able to pull it easily and you give it to us for everyone, perfect, fine. Don't waste time. If it is something that you need to manually enter, we only need it for people who are age 49 or over in 2025 and have more than 125,000 in gross compensation. Again, if that's not provided, it's going to get bounced back to you. So that's that new box, the W-2 Box 3 compensation. Now, this is a nice one. There are several compensation categories on the spreadsheet that do not need to be provided unless your plan excludes them from plan eligible compensation. How do you know if it's excluded from plan eligible compensation? Well, hopefully you know, and you're properly excluding it, or your payroll knows and it's properly being excluded. But if you go to your plan adoption agreement, and you can get that on Nova's plan sponsor link under plan documents, it's under number 23 in the adoption agreement. It'll show you what types of compensation may be excluded. And maybe your plan doesn't exclude any types of compensation, and you can skip these columns then. Okay, if you're not sure, reach out to your Nova account manager, save yourself that time. But if your plan does exclude bonuses, taxable reimbursements, allowances, or fringe benefits, commissions, overtime, or if there's some kind of custom exclusion, you'll want to provide those amounts so that we can properly calculate your plan eligible compensation. Now, severance would potentially apply to all plans, because all plans across the board, if you have true severance, which is not your final paycheck, but if there was a severance package drawn up between the company and a former employee, that compensation is never plan eligible, and we do need you to provide that in column V. Okay, if your plan has certain employees that are being excluded from the plan, by definition, like in the plan's adoption agreement says this type of employee is excluded, we do want you to mark that in column AD. So that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be included on the census. It means you include them. They received a W-2, but you mark in column AD that they're excluded. You can just put a Y there. If you don't have any excluded employees, good news is skip column AD. They're being excluded because of a job classification. Go ahead and type in what that classification is beside it so that we can confirm, yes, that's an excluded category. If you have multiple divisions in your plan, and that's important for how your plan functions, that information should be provided in AF. Okay. That's important, you know, if your plan tests them separately. And if you're not sure about that and you're a company that has multiple divisions, you know, ask your account manager. For the most part, you would know if there's that kind of special testing for your plan. Okay, so officer. Anyone who is an officer in the company, in column AC, you're going to mark with a Y. I think it pulls it in from the prior year too, but double check that because sometimes officers change. Okay. Then we want to talk about some of the employer contributions. And I want to go through these because to me, these are confusing. They are not very descriptive. But starting with column Y, the employer match, that is a discretionary match. So if your plan has a discretionary match, that's where you're going to put it. If your plan's a safe harbor plan, even though you call it a match, it's really a safe harbor match. Don't put it in employer match. That's just for discretionary match contributions. If you have a safe harbor plan and you make the safe harbor match or the safe harbor non-elective, or you use a QACA match or a QACA non-elective, all those types of contributions go under this safe harbor contribution column. And then finally, employer contribution would be like if you have a Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage contributions would go under there. It's very unusual, but if you pre-fund profit sharing contributions, that would go under there. Don't put, this is what I'd like my profit sharing contribution to be under there. This is only contributions. All of these are only contributions that have been already deposited for 2025. Okay. Remember, if you want to make one and you want Nova to calculate something, that goes back to that step number 7 that Meredith talked about. But these are for contributions that have been deposited throughout the year for 2025. Okay, again, just wanted to bring up this, if you're a type of entity, you know, you're a partnership, sole proprietorship, you are not a corporation. So this does not count for S Corps, because I know partners and S Corps sometimes get K1s, but that's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for partnership, sole proprietorship. Your income's not going to be on a W-2. So we are going to need copies of your K1s or your Schedule Cs. Please send them to your account manager through our secure file exchange. So important. Don't email. You don't want that personal information of yours going through a regular email. Send it through the secure file exchange that Meredith explained earlier in the presentation. Want to just remind you, Nova cannot proceed with contribution calculations, testing, or your Form 5500 until we get your K1, your Schedule C. So if you have an urgency to get any of that information from Nova, for whatever the reason might be, reach out to your accountant. Make sure that they're aware that we're waiting for that K1 Schedule C to be able to do the work for the retirement plan. So once you have that whole census spreadsheet finished, all your information in it, you double check, you make sure it's good. Hopefully you could pull it straight from your payroll and you didn't have to type much in. Maybe it didn't take you too much time. Save your file, go back to that main screen that we were talking at the beginning of step 9, click on those 3 dots. You'll get the pull down to do the import. It's a real easy drop and drag. So just pull it over from where you have it saved, drop it in. It's going to import for you. You will see import results. And I'm happy here because I had 36 records in my file and 36 were imported. Okay. Now, I did stress, don't make any changes to the format of the file. Don't move any worksheets around. If for some reason you are struggling to get this import to work, you know, you tried to do this step and it wasn't happy, records are being skipped, whatever the case might be, please reach out to your Nova account manager. We might be able to quickly help you. One of the things I want to point out is for each employee, and this is very important, for each employee, you should only have 1 row. So some companies or some plans might have multiple entities in them, and maybe an employee worked for 2 different entities during the year. And so when you pull the records, there's one row for this entity and then the same employees in another row. You're going to have to combine them. That's really important. That's where you might see like records skipped or something like that. One row per person. We can't handle multiple rows per people. Okay. But reach out to your Nova account manager. We're glad to help you out. We don't want you struggling with the import. What your Nova account manager might do is to ask you to send them the file through our secure file exchange. Please do not send it through email. That's sending everyone's social security number and all that information through email. Don't do it. Don't do it. Send it through our secure file exchange. Okay. Then as an account manager, I can look at your file and I might be able to get you in the right way. I could import it for you. Now, if I do that, you're still going to have to go back in and do the final approval step. Okay. So once you have that all imported in and you have check marks across the board here, everything's happy, check, 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 9 of them, you're on the approval step. You're going to see this on the approval step, and it is so important. It says, please review all information closely prior to submitting. If revised testing is needed due to incorrect census data, additional fees of $200 an hour will apply. Make sure your data is good. We don't want to charge you extra, but when you give us bad data, we spend the time to go through all the testing. You give us new data, we got to spend that same amount of time to go through the revised testing. Please remember, Nova's work is only as good as the information that you give us. So if you give us bad data, the testing that we do, you know, you're going to look at and you're going to be like, this isn't right. Well, the data we got's wrong. So please make sure that you're good to go before you submit our census test, because when we get it, we're going to jump on it. We're going to start working with it. Okay. All right. So when you're ready to click that sign and submit, you're going to get a drop down box. You're going to put your name, your title, phone number, and email in there so that we know who submitted it to us. That way, as an account manager, if I have questions, I'm going to know that you were the one who submitted it, that I should come to you. After you do that, you'll know you submitted it. You're going to get this pop-up that says, congratulations, you've successfully submitted it. You'll get an email too. Some of you may have to provide us with some additional information outside of that census. For the most part, most of our clients are going to be finished with giving us data after they submit their census. But if you have brokerage accounts that are outside from your normal record keeper, if you don't have Nova set up to receive the monthly statements, you'll need to provide those to Nova. We can't complete your Form 5500 without them, and we will send you reminders. Again, that won't apply for most of you, but you know, if you have some separate accounts outside of your normal record keeper, if you're set up with self-directed brokerage accounts for your participants. Couple of tools on our website that are going to be helpful. Let's say you submitted your census and you want to keep a copy for yourself of the entire thing. You can go into data collection on our plan sponsor link, and it's going to have a history there of the census information that you submitted. Click on it, you'll get a report. Now, let's say you'd click on this and you'd see your report for 2025 and you're like, oh my goodness, even though Christine told me about being so careful, I made an error. You can't edit it in this file. Reach out to your account manager as soon as possible. You know, if it's real soon, they might be able to catch it right away. But don't try to edit anything. These are just for view only reasons. The other thing is, if you want to pull your 2024 census to see what you submitted, you can go out here and do that. So that's helpful. Need some extra help with your census? We do have a service called NovaLink. If you use any of these payroll providers, and it's the online version of it, you're eligible for NovaLink. It usually takes about 2 weeks to set up. It's not too late to set it up though now. You know, now is the time. If you haven't set it up and you want to set up Novalink, you know, reach out to your account manager about that. You can sign up for it at any time. However, if you're not signed up in January, we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to pull your 2025 census in a timely way. If you do have more questions about Novalink, here is the website link to our Novalink brochure. Also reach out to your account manager. Now, if you are already a Novalink user or you want to be a Novalink user, it doesn't mean that you do not have to do this year-end data collection. You will need to do steps 1 through 8. The ones that Meredith went through, those are the ones that you have to do. We can't pull those from your payroll provider. We will be able to pull that information that I explained in step 9. So my whole part for you gets dramatically decreased with Novalink. The only thing that you need to do with step 9, if you do Novalink, you can forget all the other stuff I said, but you're going to get an email from Novalink and it'll highlight what you need to review or what items may not have been able to be pulled. Then you still need to complete the approval step if you use Novalink. I have on the screen some frequently asked questions, but I think we have been getting questions. So I want to bring in Ava to see what questions that you all might have.
Thanks, Christine. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So first from Elizabeth, we have, is profit sharing same as a company match?
No. Good question, Elizabeth. Profit sharing is different than match. Profit sharing is independent of whether or not the employees make contribution. A match is a contribution that is based on the employees' deferral contributions that they make. A profit sharing contribution is truly the employer wants to make a contribution across the board to all eligible employees that are in the plan.
Thank you. We also have another question. It says, is HSA the same as FSA?
Okay, so HSA is healthcare savings account. Meredith, do you know FSA?
I think it's flexible spending account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in that item, we're looking for pre-taxed health items. And I apologize, that's some of those health realm things are not my area of expertise, but if it's pre-taxed, you know, it's coming out tax deferred, I would say, you know, yes, it's in that category.
If you're taking it from employee paychecks, like Christina's saying, pre-tax, then the employee is affected. And so you probably would need to put something in that category.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. What does a new signer need? Where do they register for a eFast to?
We will send so many instructions on how to do that. Don't worry. So at this point, if you're a new signer, just be sure to put your name first and last, and then your email address. And then we will send additional information about how you sign up with the DOL, because you're going to need to sign up with them to set up your electronic PIN and username.
Yeah. And that usually takes place like in late spring. So we have a lot of time leading up to that.
Okay. And then what if they termed in 2024, but they received payroll in 2025 and therefore will get a W-2? We still include them?
Yes, please include them with the applicable date of separation.
Okay. And then the last question is, will my import results overwrite what is in there from last year?
Yes. Every time you import, everything gets overwritten, which is a real nice thing. You know, like if you found an error, fix your census Excel file, re-import, and everything gets updated. It doesn't double it, or, you know, you don't have to worry about doubling it or anything like that. Every import is new.
Perfect. So then, so the census is for all employees in 2024 and 2025 then, correct?
No.
No, it would only be for
Okay.
25. We're looking for 2025 W-2s and owner information because we are working on the 2025 testing.
Yep.
Okay.
If they got a 2025 W-2, we want them.
Even if they termed in 24, like the question earlier, if they got that W-2, if a check date made it into 2025 and they got that W-2, we'll need that.
So to follow up, it's they say they don't understand. So why are you referring to prior year employees in 2024?
Because that is what is originally on the census data. We don't have your 2025 data yet because you are providing that to us. So as a service to you all, we load all the information we had for 2024 so that you don't have to start fresh, basically. You'll need to update that list as needed because we will need all the 25 employees and W-2 information, but it'll at least get you started so you don't have to start over.
So then when they submit employee data, it's just for 2025.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. And then we have a question from Debbie. My HRIS data has come with rehire dates, but there is no record of their separation date. Will this get kicked out?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you can't have a rehire date without a separation date. We'll ask about that.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, that looks like it for questions. So before we wrap up, just a quick reminder that you can download today's presentation handout using the paper icon at the top of the screen. If you run into any issues, email us at webinars@nova41k.com and we'll be happy to help. A recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, Nova41k Associates. Thank you, Christine and Meredith.
Yes, thank you all so much.
Thank you
Reach
for
out to your account manager with questions. We're glad to help.
Alrighty, thank you guys.